Welcome back to the Future Match Area. I'm Mason Clark, joined by Drake Sasser here at the NRG Series in Madison. And Drake, we have a really interesting big round for us here. We're in round 5 of 8, so nothing is locked in stone yet, but people are getting in a position where they can draw to top 8, so to see how the end of the year leaderboard is going to break down. Let's pull up our players to watch. We are going to be watching Steven Dykman, who is in our Player of the Year race. This player's to watch leaderboard. This is for everyone who's at large for our Players Championship at the end of the year. There are 8 people on this leaderboard. Only 6 of them make it. That means 2 on the outside looking in.
Yeah, a lot at stake here. And like you said, we're just over halfway through the Swiss rounds of the tournament. Things are really starting to heat up, and players, as you can see, may not be doing as well as they'd like to be.
Yeah, Ryan Hayes, our only one with a positive record here at 3-1. I'm going to guess Cliff Boyardee is also actually at 3-1, since being 2-1, stay with Benjamin Ungar is not possible right now. So now that I've looked at it a little harder, I'm assuming those players are doing a little better than it might say here. But yes, Derek Davis, A. Adams, Chris Smith, and Will Kopchik all at 2-2. That we talked about Chris Smith earlier, looks like starting to rally there. But I think keep in mind, Ryan Hayes at 3-1. Actually, off feature match here is playing against Kat Miller Granger, who we saw earlier. Kat is also vying for that championship at the end of the year. That's another huge round for those players. We're going to have to give you an update on that as it comes later. But we can jump down to our feature match area where Steven Dykman, who started our year off winning the first tournament on Saturday, winning the second one on Sunday, and was in a commanding first place position all year, has slipped a little bit the last couple of events. A couple top 64s, 2-point weekends, nothing to write home about. And other players have lapped him, and he wants that player of the year spot. He wants to get the ability to swap pods. He has multiple friends in the thing, and he doesn't want to play against them in his own pod, and he wants to grab some good matchups. So let's see how he goes today as we have Thoughtseize.
Thoughtseize against the Geological Appraiser deck, certainly a great way to start. Yeah, you talk about, as we get a good look at the hand here, looks like quite a Trumpeting Carnosaur got a treasure maker in the form of Magma Opus to pair with it. Replicate Repudiate as well. A couple lands as well. A lot to think about here. Greater Tanuki, also another ramp spell. But yeah, when Dykman did that double win trick you just talked about, the conversation among a lot of the NRG people that I saw on Twitter was like, yeah, Dykman's a lock. Like, we're not going to catch him. He's going to play the events. Like, he's already so far ahead. Like, it's just not really feasible to catch him. And now, starting today, if things ended before this event, he's not player of the year. And that's crazy to think about when you go back and look at the previous events and just how much of a lead. I can't emphasize that enough. It's so much of a lead as we take Greater Tanuki.
By multiple spots too, Drake, right? It's not like, Dykman got second. Dykman's, I believe, 3rd place right now. So there are multiple people that have lapped him, and that's what it's about. This is why these leaderboards matter so much, right? Consistent results will get you there, and the rewards it. And this is what makes Magic so good, because it's a game that does have variance, and being able to reward players for their play is a good thing in Magic here. So,
absolutely. Second land played for Fanchen, who still has access to the Magma Opus. We did take the Greater Tanuki, so that one's not going to be able to do any of its ramping. Of course, the better of the ramp spells, that one does give you a permanent land versus like the Treasure Makers. As Steven adds second land, Blackcleave Cliffs, immediately reaching for the mana. Was it Blood Tithe Harvester? It is Reckoner Bankbuster instead. Going to go ahead and get some card draw started, potentially. Unfortunate, no pressure quite yet, but Thoughtseize does help slow the deck down a little bit. But if an Appraiser's drawn here, the shields are down.
Yeah, we do have a moment of just dying, and this is why the Appraiser deck, we talked about.
He drew one! He drew Appraiser! And there it is!
Look at Dykman's eyebrow.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah, sure. Oh my gosh. And we're going to see our first, I think, 2 or 3 kill from this deck. Geological Appraiser, of course. Bloodbraid Elf-esque, and it's going to make a Glasspool Mimic.
So the good thing to notice about this Discover deck, and sort of the big discovery, is ETB is when it triggers. That means Dykman's like, do not waste
I'm not cutting these cards. I love it. I respect it so much.
And since it's ETB, that means, we can sort of, we can still, like, if we get counter spells are better against us, but it means these copy effects are actually really good. So Glasspool Mimic and Eldritch Evolution mean when we cast Geological Appraiser, we can either go get the dinosaur, run it back, or we hit the copy spell and sort of do the same thing. So this ends up with this just putting a lot of creatures in play, and then putting Doomskar Tyrant into play in order to give everything haste and attack.
And like, even if you draw the Doomskar Titan or whatever, things don't get lined up. There's still just so much stuff in play that a deck that doesn't have a lot of sweepers like Rakdos Midrange is just going to die to that. Like, we're looking at what? I think lethal attack right now. There's already 20 power in play, and we're still doing the Discover thing. So even if, the cards have lined up in weird zones, which we do see the Doomskar Titan is there, so it looks like we might actually be able to end the game right now. you know, they might just be enough to put a bunch of creatures in play, kind of empty the Warren style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a bunch of other backdoor little things this deck can do, but right now we're seeing that we're discovering for 3. There's the Glasspool Mimic. That's going to make another one of the big dinosaurs. Yeah, and you see Yang just like picks up because we're going to go through the deck so much, and really what Dykman's wanting to see is, 1, what are your flex slots? There's a little bit of, discussion about which of the build you should be playing, etc. And 2, making sure Yang doesn't have the cards in hand that would prevent him from winning. Now, I think Dykman has seen at this point that is not the case. We are going to have a situation where...
Yeah, we're grabbing Titan now, I think.
Dead.
Yeah, this is already lethal. Yeah. We got 3 Trumpeting Carnosaurs, and that's going to be enough with the Geological Appraiser left around. And Dykman played 2 lands, played a Breaker Bankbuster, died. And that is why people are so scared of Geological Appraiser decks. I mean, we talk a lot of the conversations in the interviews and all that kind of stuff on Twitter has all been about how do we handle this deck. And in the case of Dykman, he had a Thoughtseize and still just died on turn 3. Like, that is really, really scary and an impressive performance from Fanchen. Yeah, with that, I guess let's take a look at how Dykman can improve in the Cyber games, because gonna need some help as we look at the Cyber tier. 1 Crux of Titan of Death's Hunger, 2 Editsu Consumes All, 2 Duress, 2 Go Blanks, a Calligon's Command, 2 Extinction Event, 2 Damping Sphere, 2 Unlicensed Hearse, and a Sky Sovereign Council Flagship. Pretty typical. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, it's awkward, right? Because we just saw 1 discard spell was not enough. It didn't go the distance. Damping Sphere does stop the combo a little bit, right? If you play a Damping Sphere into play, these are casting the cards, so it costs more mana. So, your opponent will not be able to go off infinitely like we saw just there. So I want the 2 Damping Spheres for sure. After that, I could see a world where maybe you just want a card like Kolaghan's Command just to kind of discard and buy back your Blood Tides Harvester or something if it gets interacted with. I doubt it though. I mean, your Torches Towers are just not very good. I guess actually that's not true. Your Torches Towers are pretty good and your Duresses are pretty bad. Excuse me on that. Got a little tongue-tied there. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much you want to cut. You don't really have a lot for it. And Dykman's deck seems to already be respecting it a fair bit with all of the cards that we have. So I think I kind of like putting the Damping Spheres, call it a day.
Fair enough. So some small adjustments, maybe just need a little bit more help from the opening hand for Fanchen. Let's have a look at his sideboard. Take a look. We have 4 copies of Shafet Monitor, 3 Dragonlord Jamoka, 2 Repudiate Replicate, 1 Keruga the Macrosage, 1 Bedeck Bedazzle, 1 Sea Double, 1 Horn Lock Whale, 1 Plains, and 1 Colossal Sky Turtle. What do you like here?
Yeah, so you see this one's totally different than our last one we saw, which had, thought distortion in the sideboard and some other stuff. So a lot of different opinions on how to sort of go about things here. Personally, I think I like the Colossal Sky Turtle. That lets us, regrow something from the graveyard, make, fight through the discard spells a little bit better, fight through the spot removal. And then Bedeck Bedazzle just to keep the pressure off from the opponent, because you saw what Dykman did there. Dykman slammed the Bankbuster because he's like, listen, I'm going to hold up my mana for the rest of the game. I want something to apply pressure or use my mana with. And the Bankbuster was just the thing he could do. And that was him saying, hey, I can't really win if I don't do anything for a bunch of turns. So I have to do something here. He's going to want to replicate that, which means he's going to be tapping out, which means Yang here wants to interact with that pressure.
Well, as these players are shuffling up, talk to me a little bit about these Shafet Monitors. So this seems like a card that you might want here, but is really clunky, right? 4 mana cycler, you cycle it, you get to search the library for a basic land card or a desert, put it on the battlefield, shuffle your library. Like that kind of permanent mana sources seems like the kind of things that you might want against a resource denial deck like Rakdos. But once again, it's 4 mana to cycle. That's a ton. And then it's 6 mana to play if the 6/5 does end up being a thing that matters, and maybe it is if Steven goes too hard on just trying to answer the combo. Is this respect for Rakdos, or is this more of a blue-white card?
I think it's more of a blue-white / decks that lack pressure. One thing that I think people often underappreciate about Rakdos is how good its beatdown plan is. If I go Blood Tithe Harvester, Graveyard Trespasser, Shieldred, that's a lot of pressure. Right now, obviously, we're kind of tapping out, exposing ourselves in that position. But, if we discuss something like Blood Tithe Harvester plus another Blood Tithe Harvester, hold up Torch the Tower, pass the turn, that's a good amount of pressure that will kill you. And combine that with maybe a Mulligan or a Thoughtseize, then you're in a really bad spot. So I think that Shafet Monitor is probably for decks that lack pressure and the games go long. Because like you said, we're going to guarantee cast our thing, sort of move the game forward a little bit. And then also have this backup sort of big body that we can cast when we hit the late game. And we already have all our lands made. But here, I think that's a little less likely to be the case. I'd much rather have a card like Beanstalk Giant from Eldritch, but that one obviously can get countered. It's just different. The 3 versus 4 mana is kind of the key point here. I think if it was 3, we could have a conversation about Shafet Monitor. personally.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah, that's a part of not something I've seen a lot of when I've been looking at these appraiser decks. It seems like a card you could potentially want, but for exactly the reasons you mentioned, probably too much pressure for that 6/5 to ever be realistic. And I think you do have to be at least in the market to do the 6/5 thing a fair bit at a time before you start reaching for like 4 copies of that card. And yeah, blue white is probably more what you're looking for. Is these players looking for keep them opening hands? We see Dykman just shaking his head as he's drawing cards. Does not seem too thrilled with what he's been looking at. Fanchen, on the other hand, something I love about this appraiser deck that reminds me a lot of other combo decks is the opening hands just look so wild. You just like look at like 1 or 2 lands, and then all your average seems to your hands like 6.5 or something. Yeah. All your cards cost $1 million.
Yeah, it is a wild looking deck that it plays very weird. I think it's also pretty strong. You know, Cat Miller Granger earlier in the day said it really well. It's a 1-card combo deck. If you resolve the 1 card, you basically just always win the game. There are some cards, you know, like Authority of the Consoles, Damping Sphere, etc., that can stop you. But for the most part, you're just going to win when you do your thing. And that is very appealing and allows you to do things like this where, you know, you're playing all these lands and all these big cards that don't really do anything and just make treasures, and you just kind of go quick, you know, and then if the game goes super long, you have this awful backup plan with these clunky cards, but they're good if your opponent doesn't put pressure. You know, if Dykman doesn't have pressure and sits here all game, we might see, you know, end of turn Magma Opus, hit you for a bunch, put a 4/4 into play, cast a Tanuki, go. That sort of stuff does matter.
Right. And I mean, even doing things like whatever, if you counter an Eldritch Evolution off of like Trumpeting Carnosaur, we've seen some of that happen with like Spell Pierces used to like stop the combo. 7/6 Trampler is just so much. And that is, I think, a really important thing to be considering when you're talking about this deck in the context of its fail rate, something I brought up a little bit earlier. You know, when it looks good, it looks crazy good, like we just saw. Its fail rate, though, is actually still pretty good. I mean, Trumpeting Carnosaur, really big. Eldritch Evolution, the only target for this duress that has been cast by Dykman. I guess Dykman just kind of happy to have a target, as we're going to go ahead and get this hand written down. A little NRG pad to make that happen. We can take a look, too. We're looking at 3 lands and appraisers there, and it can be uncounterable thanks to Cavern of Souls, but we actually need a red source in order to even make that happen.
Yeah, it's a very awkward hand here from Yang, but a spot where, you know, it might be okay if we draw the right card off the top, or we get one of our treasure makers off the top, you know? We draw something like that Magma Opus we talked about, that brilliant creativity. You know, we lead on the Glasspool Mimic, we play the Otawara, bam, suddenly turn 3 Dykman's dead.
Exactly. And of course, the Trumpeting Carnosaur, probably more like, there's the red source. Stomping Ground was drawn right away. Too easy. Yeah, the Trumpeting Carnosaur, probably a little bit of a pipe dream at the moment, though we did just draw a land. That makes us only 2 mana off as we go back to Dykman. Fairly strong first turn, at least gets to see what's up. Needs to be ready for an appraiser on turn, you know, maybe 3, possibly 4. But have to draw a treasure maker for it to be 3. Tapping out again, it's going to be Blood Tithe Harvester. That's that pressure you mentioned. Blood token coming for Dykman. And back to Fanchen we go. It's going to be Eldritch Evolution is the draw. Tap Stomping Ground played. Back to Dykman we go. Dykman getting a little bit of free information about that Stomping Ground. Still a lot of cards he knows in Fanchen's hand. As he begins his turn 3. I think now knows with the tap thing he's not dead. There's no way for him to be dead on turn 3. So we can take this turn off a little bit, a lot safer than we did it last time. And it's going to be a second Blood Tithe Harvester.
Drake, I love Steven Dykman. He's a smart, tight, technical player. And look at him, making me look like a genius. What if we just go 2 Blood Tithe Harvesters and hold up interaction? What's your plan?
Well, what would you do? What would you do?
And then Steven Dykman's like, heard of me, and I was like, you know what? That's a good plan.
And
just decided to do it. Yeah. As we do see a popping of the blood here in the turn for Dykman.
Yeah, go ahead and get rid of the land. Land drops seem to be a plenty already for Dykman. Looking for some of that interaction you called out. Finding that right mixture now that we have a good clock going thanks to 2 Blood Tithe Harvesters. Some of the power of the card for sure. Right to combat we go. Beatdowns for 6. Maybe eyeing that Carnosaur to interact with one of these.
Yeah, one of the things I love, by the way, about this Geological deck is the Carnosaur, like, you know, we saw it kind of against Ledger Shredder earlier, just being like ability to deal 3 damage or something and just pick it off when it's also your big payoff card is so nice. Like right here, we're dead in 2 turns or we're dead in 4 turns. You know, that is like for free. I would play this card if it never did that and you just get to do it.
Yeah, you just get that on the house, and that's really big here, as it does go after one of the Blood Tithe Harvesters. No play from Dykman certainly signals some interaction. If I'm Fanchen, I can't be super optimistic about this Geological Appraiser. Now, the question is, do you even cast it? Do things get better? Is holding this ever correct?
I think one thing that you astutely pointed out earlier about Discover is it goes to your hand if you don't cast it, right? So just actually going up the card probably matters a good bit when there are things like Glasspool Mimic and we're trying to hard cast the dinosaur version. So, I think what Yang's going to do here is just play this and basically chump check Dykman. If you don't have it, you're dead. If you do have it, then great. I'm just going to have this big thing, Yeah,
I just get an extra card. Yeah, and that's exactly what's going to happen. As Stomp going to stomp the Appraiser.
Wait, isn't the Appraiser a 3/3 and still on the board? So Dykman must have or is it? Why is it?
It's supposed to be Bloodbraid Elf. It's 3/2 mirrors the Bloodbraid Elf thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, why is it over there by Keruga then?
I'm not totally sure. I think it's because we're resolving the ability still. And so, yeah, here we go. We're going to go ahead and get a quick read. Yeah, I can put this in my hand. Let me do that and make sure that's true before. Now we're going to shuffle.
This is going to be a moment where the players know what's happening, and it's just odd for us.
Yeah, it looks a little weird. Like I said, I imagine that's to signal that we're resolving the ability still, even though the creature's dead. Yeah, there it goes to the graveyard. Eldritch Evolution added to the hand, and Dykman has that handled. And Bone Crusher Giant dialed up to potentially add to the clock. So this looking to be like a pretty good spot for Dykman. But things, we mentioned it a bunch. Things can look good, and then you die out of nowhere. That's just kind of what makes the Geological Appraiser deck as scary as it is. Maybe crack this blood here on end step. Thinking about it. May not like his card in hand. Pretty low on cards at this point is Dykman. Committing a lot of resources to the board. Is going to crack the blood. Discarding. Graveyard Trespasser. Card coming for Dykman. Untap. Another draw for Dykman as well. So we... obviously, the face-up plays Bone Crusher Giant, but a lot of options. We have a lot of mana to work with, and we have a reasonable clock. Bloodtooth Harvester does a good job beating down, especially with Fanchen already at 11, representing, of course, 4 turns, but that's still a lot of turns. That's enough time to get to the Dino. Ideally, if Dykman can just get Fanchen dead on board now, I don't know if there's a way to actually do that, but just keep the dinosaur from even being a factor, that'd be nice. I've already been through one, discarded to kill the Bloodtooth Harvester earlier. It's Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
I like this. The clock is still lethal, but you get that rummage on the next turn to kind of guarantee, we're going to be interacting. And I like this from Yang. Just be like, hey, guess what? We're back.
Yeah, check it out. Numero dos. And this one looks like it's going to happen. Do we not have a one-man answer? No one-man answer. Here we go. It's appraising time.
And it looks like Yang disagrees with me and brought in the chef hits. Makes some sense. Like we talked about, if there's not a lot of pressure. Maybe you think Dykman's going to be slower.
Yeah, ironically, a lot of pressure here. Didn't draw it, though. Doesn't matter. And here is the Eldritch Evolution. That's actually going to work. Is Dykman just dead?
I think Dykman's dead. So Yang, I believe, drew the Ghalta for turn, but we still have the Doomskar Titan. So I think unless things go, unbelievably wrong, we should be having lethal here.
Is there any Eldritch Evolutions left is the question.
So there's one in hand.
Does that matter? Is that even a thing that matters?
It does matter because you could maybe run out of stuff, but then if you run out of those, you only have Glasspool Mimics. And then what's happening is you won't have the Eldritch Evolution to go find the haste creature, but you will just have an army of dinosaurs.
Okay.
So
the dinosaurs still get it done. So there's just no way for it to fail from here. Yeah, here's a Glasspool Mimic, and this is already just going to get really hard. It's so incredible that even if there is some kind of fail rate, I don't even know what it would look like. But assuming there is some kind of fail rate from right here, we already have just 21 power that tramples in play, so it just doesn't matter. And you've got whatever, 24. So it's just even the fail rate just puts so much power in play that it's not unbeatable, but a tall ask. That does not cost 3 less. That is a 4-mana card as we keep going. Another, we can grab that one. That one can copy a dinosaur.
Speaking of dinosaurs, I think Dykman might be going the way of them.
It seems to be that way for sure, as Dykman can really only look on as Fanchen just continues to flip cards from the top of his library. We're just going to keep going. We're just off it. There we go. I love this. Are we out?
I think we're out because I think this is the part where, unless we have 2 Doomskar Titans, I missed it. We should have seen everything, and we just have to finish resolving it per the rules.
Right, yeah. This happens with Cascade too, like previously, where you would have to go through your whole deck and then shuffle it when you have a Cascade, but you're out of it. So now, so we can't do the kill now. We have a pile of garbage.
Yeah, we can't do the kill. We have 28 power, and just in these 4 creatures, a couple 3/2s. They have trample. Dykman's like, whatever. I refuse to cut your deck.
No, this Eldritch. I'm sorry, Eldritch. Extinction Event. Is that the bust? Is that draw it or bust for Dykman? We have a lot of looks thanks to Fable.
Yeah, I have no idea what the Rakdos players are doing if they're bringing that card in. Maybe this happens more than I think it does. And now, if it does, Dykman didn't have it.
Yeah, I don't know. It might be that you just don't have enough cards that matter. Like, this is such a linear deck. So much of your stuff just doesn't matter. But yeah, Dykman doesn't find whatever he was looking for there off the Fable. Fist bumps, and that's going to do it. A 2-0 victory for Fanchen, really showing, I mean, just the consistency and the power of the Geological Appraiser deck. I mean, Geological Appraiser card we called out doesn't work that well because it dies to a lot of stuff. Ended up working there.
Yeah, 1-card combo, really strong against non-counterspell decks. And even counterspell decks, right? We saw you can overwhelm them so early. You know, how good could any matchup be if I kill you on turn 3 and if I'm on the play, right?
Right.
Like this is something people say me about Mono Green. They tell me about Mono Green. They're like, hey, I have a good matchup. And I'm like, do you? Because sometimes I go Elf into Cure into Cav and you're dead, right? Yeah. And like, you can't really win. And they're like, no, I have a good matchup. I'm like, okay. And then we play and this happens. Same thing happens here, right? You might be able to do something, but like, this is really strong, and people underestimate how strong these starts can be.